Joining us now, investigative reporter for the Austin American-Statesman, Tony Plahetsky, and former Republican congressman and executive director of the Aspen Institute's congressional program, Charlie Dent, and Democratic strategist and author of the Salty Politics newsletter on Substack, Julie Roginski, Julie, aptly named. Tony, we'll start with you. You're now in Illinois right now, where those Texas lawmakers have decamped. Game this out for us. The Texas State House is going to be back in session in the next hour. What happens next?
Well, we've been talking and interviewing this morning some of those Democrat members, and they say they are here. They are here at least through August 19th. That is when the special session ends. But then when we press them on their sort of long-term plan, they say that really this is something that they are taking day by day, week by week, potentially even month by month. But at this moment in time, they are firm in their decision. They are resolute that moving themselves from Texas here to Illinois was, in fact, the right thing to do, the just thing to do for in their words, the sake of democracy.
Are lawmakers you're talking to concerned about these threats from Governor Abbott to extradite, expel, even arrest them?
Yes and no. However, they mostly think that that is more political posturing, frankly, from the governor, that when you drill down and you really understand the law and the legal mechanics, they say that that's not really, in their minds, something that could legally be accomplished. However, it should be noted that that is still something, in fact, that we are hearing that the Republicans are gearing up to do. A lot of this, though, is going to come down to what exactly happens in the next hour, because it is worth noting that nothing can happen until it is official that, in fact, the quorum has been busted and that the House does not have the needed number of members in their seats to do the state's business.
Charlie, is this a winning strategy long term for Republicans? They will pick up essentially 5 seats here. But is there a risk of what's been called dummy mandering, where they start diluting the seats they already hold?
That's certainly a possibility, because in order to, by the way, I was a state legislator for 14 years, so I've had my hands in the redistricting process on at least 2 occasions. But I'll tell you, yeah, they run the risk of diluting Republican votes in order to create these 5 additional Republican seats. And by the way, Texas Republicans have done this before. In 2003, when I came into Congress in 2004, they redistricted, picked up 5 seats, Republican seats in my class. They, I think, attempted something similar in 2021. And Democrats employed the same tactics. You know, they basically left the state. But at the end of the day, yeah, Republicans are running a risk also of escalation, because we're seeing that perhaps New York, California, Illinois might engage in a redistricting process mid-decade, which could, again, result in Republican members in states like California losing their seats. And so there are going to be some Republican congressmen who might be telling the president, hey, not so fast. There is risk for some of your allies.
Julie, I want to get your thoughts on the Democratic strategy here, but let's listen to Governor Kathy Hochul on those efforts.
I cannot stand by and let this happen while Donald Trump and his co-conspirator, Greg Abbott, erode our democracy. History will judge us on how we respond to this moment. But here in New York, we will not stand on the sidelines with the timid souls. This is a war. We are at war. And that's why the gloves are off, and I say, bring it on.
Is this a slippery slope, though? Do 2, 3, 4 wrongs make a right here?
Yeah, they do. In this kind of situation, of course. I mean, we're fighting for the soul of our democracy here. If the Republicans want to do something that's really rarely been done before, certainly not for any extrajudicial reason like they're doing right now in Texas, if they want to reopen up redistricting, reapportionment midway through the cycle, and as somebody, Charlie Dent, talked about how he was involved in redistricting, I have been involved in redistricting for the last 3 cycles, and I can tell you this is completely out of line. And if this is something that Greg Abbott wants to do, then yeah, bring it on. In that case, I really hope that Kathy Hochul does exactly what she says, which is move immediately to change the Constitution here in New York, that the same thing happens in California, that the same thing happens in Illinois. I would hope Governor Murphy in New Jersey calls a special session to get the legislature to put something on the ballot immediately. I think he's got only a few days to be able to do that. I hope he moves on that as well. But there is no room and no excuse for Republicans doing this and then Democrats just unilaterally disarming and saying, well, you know what, we don't like nuclear war, so we're not going to proliferate ourselves. That's just not how it's done. It's not how it's done in war. It's not how it's done in politics.
And Tony, just distill for us and for our viewers, what is the downside for voters here if this Republican plan goes through?
Well, Democrats will say unequivocally that it is unjust, that it draws lines in a way that are not consistent with the census, that is not consistent with how redistricting has always been done in Texas. And so they say that voters lose, that this is a patently political effort. And that is against what democracy is about, what America is about. And that is the reason they say they are taking such a strong effort, leaving their homes, leaving their families, leaving in some cases their jobs in the private sector to come here to Illinois for at least the next couple of weeks.
Charlie, former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder had initially said that we should be fighting against this politicization of the maps and that this should be an independent arbiter that deals with this. Have we seen the death, essentially, of an independent commission that deals with redistricting?
Probably. I hate to say that, but that's probably true. It's very difficult to do this. Look, you have to understand that redistricting is the most political of all processes. And you should remember, too, that these state legislators who are drawing the seats, they're not drawing them for these members of Congress. They're drawing them for themselves.
Democrats with fines, arrests, felonies, potentially even their seats. How serious do you think the risk is that they're taking? We should know because it was well delivered, let's say. Representative Jones, they're going to come get us how? I can't even come close to delivering it the way she did. What do you say, Congressman?
Look, Chris, obviously there's a risk. Obviously there's a risk that some voters don't like the fact that these legislators are leaving their state. But I think most people will perceive that they are doing what they can, that they are playing the cards that they've been dealt. Obviously, this is the only way that they can try to slow down this process. Who knows if they can even stop it. But I also think there's a risk on the part of Republicans being too aggressive and being too heavy-handed. If we just look back at the last 20 years, neither party has been able to maintain a trifecta, meaning control of the White House, the House, and the Senate after those first 2 years. Why? Because the perception that parties, when they have full control of the government, are too aggressive, are too heavy-handed in pushing their policies and in trying to remain in power, that tends to produce a backlash. So while this might help Republicans in Texas, it may hurt them in other swing districts throughout the country.
Sahil, what are you hearing from congressional Democrats?
Well, there's certainly been a lot of anger, Chris. There's also a determination by Democrats to retaliate. They see this mid-decade move in Texas as an escalation of partisan warfare over redistricting because this time it isn't being driven by a court decision or by some external event. This is simply being pushed by President Trump and Governor Abbott, clearly as a way to expand Republican power and knock out House Democrats who won in existing districts. And now Democrats are insisting they need to fight fire with fire in blue states, and they say they won't unilaterally disarm if Republicans are going all in here. Take a listen to what House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said this morning.
We're only 3 seats short from taking back the House. That is a historically close number. That is what has House Republicans and Donald Trump scared to death of what is going to happen in the midterm election. That's why we're seeing this extraordinary action in Texas. But you also are going to see an extraordinary response from Democrats coast to coast throughout the country and at all points in between.
Now, this is a real vibe shift in the party from the days when Democrats were led by good government activists in their base, tried to ban partisan gerrymandering. As recently as 3 years ago when they had the trifecta here in Washington, there's also frustration now given that some blue states like California and New York have enacted limits on partisan redistricting, including in some places independent commissions, which Democrats in those states are now looking to get around either by finding loopholes, by changing state laws. Other blue states like Illinois, of course, have already drawn favorable maps for Democrats. This This new effort, however, is being led by California Governor Gavin Newsom, who a few days ago tweeted a very hypothetical House map in his state where all 52 seats are blue. And in this case, they could knock out 9 House Republicans. That gives you a sense of the emerging mentality among Democrats. So bottom line, it's unclear what Democrats can do in time for the 2026 midterms. But sooner or later, it looks like they will retaliate if Texas Republicans go forward with this. Chris?
I've been covering redistricting for a long time. I remember the times when there were all these maps in rooms and people were like looking at charts. And now you just plug it all into a computer, right? And then suddenly you have a Gavin Newsom map that shows everything is blue. But look, Democrats have had a problem. There was a poll by AP. 35% of Democrats have negative attributes that they attribute to their party, using words like weak and ineffective. Is this the kind of thing that can help them turn it around?
I absolutely think it can. And just those scenes of Governor Pritzker and Governor Hochul meeting with Democrats from Texas shows that unity. Attorneys general, Democratic attorneys general have band together to fight Donald Trump. Why can't Democratic governors? They're doing it. I think seeing more of that really does help. I would also add the Supreme Court is about to take on a case that may gut the rest of the Voting Rights Act. So there's a lot at stake here. And I would say, you know, for a number of years, Democrats were governed by when they go low, we go high. That worked potentially for a short period of time, but we're not in that space right now.
Trump made a big mistake. He opened the genie's bottle and he can't get the genie back in, because what he's done is ramped up partisan warfare. And look, the Democrats for far too long, and there's still some older moderate Democrats that are like this in Congress, who really believe that if you just keep giving the Republican Party what it wants, eventually they'll smarten up. That's really what they believe. They believe, again, they'd rather fight Bernie Sanders and Zoran Mamdani and AOC and Liz Warren. They'd rather fight those people than Republicans, because when the left wins, the corporate donors for both parties lose, right? But more and more they're realizing that Republicans don't play the game fair. And this Republican Party, they're never going to be quote-unquote reasonable again, if they were ever reasonable in the first place, right? Republicans haven't been reasonable since Eisenhower, right? Like, let's be real about that. They have not been reasonable since Eisenhower, right? And so it's not going to go back to normal. And so what they're saying is, you're starting this, and if you're going to gerrymander like this, we're going to fight back. And growing numbers of Democrats across the political spectrum, at the party top and in the grassroots, they agree on this. So there's party unanimity to fight back, whether it means, you know, denying the quorum, or whether it means saying that if you do it in Texas, we'll do it in New York, we'll do it in California, we'll do it in even purple states that are currently controlled by Democrats. We'll do it everywhere. And again, Republicans have more states, but a lot of the Republican states that exist only have 1 or 2 House seats. States like, you know, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho. You can't gerrymander that much in these states, because if they only have 1 or 2 seats, it's hard to gerrymander. Not impossible. If there's only 1 seat, you can't. It's statewide. And if there's only 2 seats, the gerrymandering can at most just win you 1 extra seat. But Democrats control states like California and New York, right? Even Colorado is not, it could be gerrymandered more. There's other examples as well. And so fundamentally, guys, Republicans are finally realizing that they kept pushing and pushing, and now a newer generation of Democrats have come in and said, we're going to hit back.